Today's pattern is so great to use with fat quarters. You can use yardage. It's scrappy. I cut out 10-inch squares from all of those fabrics you saw I had laid all over the bed. And this is the beginning of this fabulous quilt. It's simple, it's fast, it's fun. This is one of those stack quilts where you take 3 pieces of fabric that you like that go together and then you cut them out. The version we're making today is for an artist friend. She loves color. I'm choosing 3 colors and I want those colors to feel like they're friends. I'm looking to make sure they're happy together, and that's how I'm choosing them. And I stack them in 3s into my little cookie sheet because it will hold them until I'm ready to start cutting. I'm going to stack them when you're not watching, but right now I want to show you how to cut them and get them ready. I'm looking at the sides, I'm staying away from the corner, and I'm making the first cut. The first cut, just a straight cut at an angle. The next, I go in a little, I cut that angle, and now my goal is to get a triangle. That last cut gets that triangle so that you see it's right in the middle. You want to be careful when you're cutting these not to get too close to the edges because you don't want your triangle to not have a point or to fall off the edges. You kind of learn by doing this, but you keep your triangle pretty close to the inside. The first cut is so important, and it really doesn't matter where you start. What matters is that you are going to make a triangle. This just takes your brain a minute to figure out. Be nice to yourself. Where you place that ruler and what angle you decide to cut on, it varies the size of the triangle, which is the magic of this quilt. You want your triangles to be varied. You want them to be big and little, and just the movement of a different angle, a little bit of a different angle. And see, I'm thinking, how do I want this triangle to look? Where should I put the ruler? And as I draw pictures with my finger and then go back and cut with the actual cutter, I decide on what shape this particular triangle is going to be. And as you make this quilt, this is the joy of it, of just making every different funny little kind of triangle you can make. You can make slivery triangles or big chubby triangles or little teeny triangle right in the middle of the block. Any of the ways you make it, it's going to blend together to be a masterpiece. You make the last cut and there it is, ready to sew. Back to our original, I leave the tray here because every single time I'm ready to sew, I cut 3 more. So you cut 3 at once like I just did. I keep another cookie sheet tray at the top so I can put finished blocks in it. And then I come back to sewing the block. The first step is to take the bottom and put it on top. So now I know this is the first block and they're all in order underneath of this. And I could just sew them together, but I want to see. And see, don't get them mixed up. Don't goof. You have to keep them in exactly the layout that they're in. But I like to see what I'm going to sew. So this is not a necessary step. It's just a step I like to do. So I'm showing you that this is how I do it. You could just sew and keep it in the pile, but I want to see exactly what I'm sewing. I'm sewing them in a particular way, and the first seam sews pretty accurately close to being right. You just sew that first seam, which is the last cut you made. So you do it backwards. However you cut the triangle, you reverse it to sew it. So first cut, second cut, third cut, you sew third cut, then second cut, then first cut. We sew these first 3, and then I'm going to press them, and I will show you. As you sew these, the block gets smaller. It's shrinking in on itself. So whatever size you want your block to be, you start 2 inches bigger because it's going to get smaller. I'm putting the corner of that triangle so that it matches and letting the extra part be off the side that is on the outside of the block. And as I press it and see how I'm lining the corner of that triangle up so that that corner will be the straightest edge, because it's not going to be straight. So that is the trick of sewing this together so that it uses less fabric and works better, so that they'll be big enough for you to be able to trim them when you're done. You have to take care as you sew these, but it is not hard. And you do not have to have an exact 1/4 inch seam. You just have to have a straight seam. So try to be consistent with yourself as you do that. I keep showing you both sides, but when you sew, notice that I always sew on the piece that is a complete straight edge. That is what keeps it so that you can sew straight and clear. I look, and if I can see like purple, I will trim it off because I don't want to see other fabric coming through. But if I can't see it, I leave it because I just don't care. This is very thin, wonderful batik fabric. So this one you can't see, I'm going to not trim it. But the purple I trimmed. So you make that decision yourself if you think it's worth it or not. We lay these last pieces on and look at how they're going to go. It's so exciting. This is really fun. It's such a free-spirited sewing thing. And if you're not used to doing wild, crazy, let's chop up some fabric and sew it back together, this is a great quilt to play with. You can make these triangles, like I said, in any size. You just want to decide what finished size, or actually unfinished size block do you want, and you start 2 inches bigger. We're going to trim these down to be 8 inches, so we started with 10-inch blocks. And for every single block that you have, it will make a quilt block with a triangle in it. When you're doing math to decide how big you want your quilt to be, you need as many 10-inch blocks to start as you want 8-inch blocks to finish. So it will actually sew down to 7.5 inches if you're doing quilt math. And say you want teeny tiny triangles to make a miniature. If you're making a 3.5-inch block to finish, you start with a 5.5-inch block. You sew the triangle, it'll trim down to 3.5 inches, and then it will sew to 3 inches. Anytime you want to do math for these triangles, that's how you do it. I want to show you again that I trim anytime the dark is showing through. So if it's a lighter fabric like the yellow, if you trim it, it just looks better all around. And then pressing it so that it lays perfectly flat will help when you're ready to trim these. I want you to see, you just turn your triangle a different direction and it looks like a different triangle, even for the ones that are exactly the same cut. You can kind of decide where you want to trim according to the triangle. I like to put the triangle in the middle. And as you decide how big to trim these, you have to decide what is your smallest block and trim them to that. For me, I usually can do just the 2 inches, which is why I told you that math. It may be different for you depending on if you sew bigger seams. So sew a couple of these before you go wild with what you're going to do, and just test out how big your seams are and if 2 inches is enough for you. But for me, 2 inches is what it is, so I take these 10-inch blocks and I cut them down to 8 inches. And I sometimes decide where they are by where I want that triangle. I want it to be far enough in that I can sew a seam and not catch the corner of the triangle. I look and I go, okay, there's 8 inches. I can come over just a bit. I want the excess to come off the edge farthest from the triangle. And then there it is. I now can flip it over and trim it. By trimming it this way, see how I have so much excess fabric off the top? That will center my triangle more. And your triangle doesn't have to be centered. It's so forgiving. All these triangles go so well together, and you can flip them around if you don't like where one is, and it gives it a completely different look. This is the most fun to play with these triangles. Years ago, I made a bunch of baby quilts doing this method because it's just this delightful way to use fabric and to play and to do different things with color. You can do this with sweet, soft pastels. You could do a whole quilt and have it all be pinks or all be blues and do monochromatic with this pattern, and it would be beautiful. I had friends at my house for a retreat when we made this quilt, and so you will see friends helping me. As I lay the quilt out with the help of my friends, we are just trying to put things next to each other that feel pleasing. So you can watch as I'm going, yeah, no, and move that. Okay, better. And it's just follow your gut. And I know some of you tell me, but I don't have a sense of color. Yes, you do. You can do it. This is a random color feeling. So you just lay it out, and if something bugs you, move it. Squint your eyes and look at the dark ones that pop out. See what's feeling like it goes good together. And if it bothers you, move it. That is the only big trick. There are so many sharp angles on this quilt that I quilted it with a really flowing pattern. It's my hook feather pattern, and it just makes it blend. We put black and white on the back so it'd be a beautiful neutral, and it has yet to be bound, but it will be bound shortly. It looks so beautiful on the king size bed. Make a triangle, stay merry and creative.